Good morning, I'm Catherine Ross with TheStreet here at the NYSE with Jim Cramer. Jim, the markets were rough yesterday.
Yeah, well, it was 10-to-1 volume, negative to positive, and my old great friend Mark Haynes, who was a fabulous anchor for CNBC before he passed away, always told me in the years that we jousted, and we jousted a lot, that that ratio, you can't sell once that ratio hits. That doesn't necessarily mean you should buy, but I am respectful of what Mark Haynes told me, which is that I think the time to sell, as you know, we sold a lot for action alerts, was before yesterday when we were more cautious, and now we have to look to buy. And we'll talk about that in our conference, in our call, our club call, but I'm not saying it's too late to sell some things, but when you look at now what they're selling, they're throwing away the drug stocks because people feel suddenly better after that CPI number. That's probably ill-advised. They're taking up the cloud kings, but there's so many sellers in those names because they're up so much. Again, ill-advised. So I just am counseling patience. Bought a little bit today. There's no need to be a hero. We're going to have to do some retesting. There'll be some selling coming in. We don't know who the big sellers were, what motivated them. It's a little like the VIX sell-off. Now, some people say it's nothing like the VIX sell-off. Every time, as I said yesterday, it's very Tolstoy, it's very Anna Karenina. All rallies are happy and the same, but every sell-off is unhappy in its own way. And we don't know what's exactly making people really unhappy that they continue to sell. But they continue to sell, and you really want to see them dry up. And we haven't seen that yet. So nothing aggressive, but I think it's a little too late to sell unless you bought at 4 a.m. today when the Dow was down 400. I like that. I was hoping it would be down 400 when we actually opened, and it wasn't, which is what makes me a little more circumspect. I have to be. That's what I've been taught. And I have, I think, a very good chapter in Confessions of a Street Addict where I literally talk about how I did the opening wrong. And I urge people to read it because what I like to do, like I do in Action Alerts, I said, this is what I did wrong. And what I did wrong was a panic sell of a big program because it looked really bad. And then the market, and I was right for about 3 hours and I felt terrific. And that was the bottom. I capitulated and that was the bottom. And I don't want to capitulate because I think that there are some buys. And that's what we're doing, but small.
TheStreet's Nelson Wang just told me that he thinks at this rate that tech stocks are kind of on sale for investors. What do you think?
What do you mean that he thinks that with Eric Johnson that there's still a lot of sellers? Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, look, do I like Amazon here? Yes, because you can't buy Amazon when it's running, okay? Do I like Salesforce? Well, no. We've been saying it's got to hit a lower level. What I am concerned about are the hardware stocks. We don't own any of them. And one of the most gut-wrenching decisions that we made was to sell NVIDIA at about 270, 272. And NVIDIA's been my favorite semi for years. But we sold it because I do not like hardware here. And I like AMD, everybody knows that. But Micron is telling you, and Applied Materials is telling you, you shouldn't own the hardware. You should own the software. So we'll pick at software, including cloud. But we are still circumspect hardware, and I think people should be.
You had a really great real money column this morning.
You thought that was good?
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
I wrote it at 3:30. I wasn't sure if it was good. Sometimes I write it, then I write it again, then I give it more once over, and then I hit it. But thank you. What'd you like about it?
Well, I thought it was really telling. You had a quote in there talking about how the president's comments kind of forced Jerome Powell to stick next to his comment, and I'm wondering what you think now. What's going to happen?
Look, when you make fun of someone, look, and I've been, I spent a lot of time, I spent some time on the cross, When you make fun of someone, the reaction is not to turn the other cheek if you're an institution like the Fed. What you have to do is actually make a stand. And the stand is that he believes, and Larry Kudlow actually said the same thing, that the softness that I'm seeing in linerboard, which is the basic building block, corrugated, of all kinds of chemicals. Think about poly and ethyl. I always joke about that, but my friends poly and ethyl, all weaker. Housing definitely peaked. Barry Sternlicht talked about that last night. He knows more about real estate than anybody I know. The regional banks are slowing their loans. Autos, we know, are a real problem from PPG. Apartment lending, that's gone down. Data center, why I'm worried about Advanced Micro and about NVIDIA. Advanced Micro built too much, by the way, because they thought Intel was knocked out, and that turned out to be a mistake. So we could make a lot of double ordering off of Intel. So that's the basic semis. Rails had a bad week last week and the week before. Thank you, Matt Horween, for pointing me at that. Brokerage has kind of turned out. And then luxury goods have been very, very weak. because of something that happened in China where they didn't allow people to go buy a lot of luxury goods, and then they got confiscated basically during Golden Week, which was last week. And then last night, engineering construction by Fluor, which is the biggest. So these are things that are alarming to me. And that's what, Larry Kudlow, he didn't dismiss me, okay, because Larry and I worked too long together, and he damned me with faint praise. He said, look, your work is good. But Larry knows I make a lot of calls to a lot of CEOs, and he respects my work as much as I respect his. And there are times when the top is different from the bottom. I do bottoms up, he does top down. And we're at one of those moments because there was a lot of double ordering to pull through for the tariffs. The supply chains mentioned in Fluor last night, supply chains were taxed by so much business. People couldn't ship one thing to another without higher costs. That's going to change too. So where I'm differing with Larry here is that temporarily, I hope, as long as the Fed doesn't keep acting and raising, we're having a pause. It's very new. Larry could say, Jim, your data is not long-term enough. All I care about is if the Fed were data dependent, like Janet Yellen was, they'd be looking at similar data. And when I ran it about the Fed in 2007, they were only looking at top down. I was speaking to people at that point in my career, a lot of the people who were my age had gotten to where they were at top of firms. So these are all people that I competed against to get a job at Goldman, and I knew them, I worked with them, and they were the ones that got to the top, and they were calling me and saying, Jim, I've known you for years, we're in a lot of trouble. Now, I got castigated for saying some things that were untrue. I was very, very negative, and I am not very, very negative. That was a systemic weakness. But my numbers are better than the Fed's right now. And that's what is 2005-6. My numbers are better because I'm making more calls than the Fed. And that means, because maybe I'm crazy, Catherine, but that's what I do for a living. And my calls are better than theirs right now. My calls say the Fed should do one and then wait. And that's the opposite of what Powell's saying.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
It's a shame because he's a very considered man. Yeah. He made intemperate comments in the context of the economy. Then the president made intemperate comments in the context of an adult. And I don't criticize, I don't go political, but that was wrong. You don't say the loco. I mean, sticks and stones may break my bones, and that's why I carry nuclear weapons. I mean, no. What we do, we just want the rhetoric to die down. Yeah. Everywhere, including with China. And I'm against China. And I think we need to retaliate stronger than the president thinks. But we don't do that in public. We get it done the way it has to be done, which is private and low-key.
So I took a poll on Twitter just out of curiosity to see what people wanted to talk about. And one of the things, you're going to love this.
Did you retweet me so we get more?
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, because I haven't been on Twitter other than to tell people I am concerned about the Giants tonight. Lane Johnson's now questionable.
Yeah.
All pro.
And this is something that I think that you're going to love. Okay. People really want to hear about cannabis, which I know you're going to talk about.
Okay, thank you. Because we got in September. We have our. We have our October teach-in.
Yep,
on
October
Saturday.
13th in NYC.
Okay. Here's what. By the way, Canopy Growth, which is the only one I'm recommending. They have $5 billion in cash. They're listed here. Do you know that they weren't allowed to touch the bell when they rang it?
Really?
That's right. The New York Stock Exchange. We're going to talk about that with Bruce Litton, the CEO, because it's still taboo. And we're going to really focus on two things. One is the size of the disruption. How many things? Do you know that one of my friends started one of these companies in part because pets are given drugs that just make them so that they're just lethargic or catatonic. People who give them, vets who are using cannabis and cannabis with THC are getting remarkable results. Okay, this is something I just learned. Okay, we're going to talk about all the different disruptions that can happen, whether it be food, whether it be soda, whether it be beer, whether it be medicine. What's the size of it? And a lot of people are thinking that it used to be 200 billion. I've been pushing for the 500 billion number. I think it's 5. We're going to flesh that out. I mean, who would have thought this is going to be used for rheumatoid arthritis? Think about that. That's the largest drug indication in the world. So we're going to focus on that. And we're also going to, candidly, we're going to use a lot of smaller companies just to talk about the size of the market, not making recommendations. And that's very important.
Very, very important. But that sounds something like you can't miss it.
I think it's going to be really good. I spent a lot of time with Bruce and obviously Constellation. Constellation legitimated this. How about the fact that 2 days ago Walmart said it has to have cannabis, and then yesterday Altria said it's taking a stake in some company that I regard as being not that great, but that's because there was a gold rush and Constellation picked the best.
And PepsiCo will have to rethink their stance on cannabis pretty soon.
You know, Coca-Cola, I think James Quincy will be ahead of them. James, very forward-thinking. He bought Topo Chico, by the way, which is by far the best. That's what we serve at Bar San Miguel. It is the best sparkling water in the world. It's Mexican sparkling water. It's just like Mexican Coca-Cola is so good, you know, because it's made of cane sugar. But I think that the reason why I'm focused on cannabis is because 1 week from now we have the repeal. Remember, I think the stocks go down, and then you buy Canopy because of the relations with Constellation, which is why I'm having Constellation first time. Constellation and Canopy together in one hall. You want to be there. I also have some great FANG people.
Yes, we can't miss out on these tech stocks, especially after the rout that they went through yesterday.
You know, remember, I'm urging patience in the market today. It's a long day. Long day. There'll be people who come out, will work and sell. Yeah. There'll be some selling between 1 and 2 on margin call because the market's not up big. They need it up big, and it's not. That's not good. And then 2:45 will be the witching hour where we will find out what's going to happen tomorrow.
All right, so I'm really curious about what a deeper take on on the markets, which we will do in the ActionAlertsPlus.com video. I'm Catherine Ross with TheStreet. Thank you for joining me, Jim Cramer. Have a great day, everyone.